So let us continue comparing our two hypothesis sets. So essentially, what we're doing in our earlier example with 2 points, to get the bias and variance, we have to repeat the analysis many times with many data sets, because essentially it's the average that we are trying to get at. So we looked at that earlier, of course. And finally, for hypothesis 0, we get these results. And this gray region is essentially signifying all the like hypotheses G1, G2, G3, and G so on we got in order to calculate G bar of X, right? And so this is the calculated bias and this is the variance. Similar to that, for the hypothesis set 1, this is the G bar of X that we get. Okay. So if we look at for like the H1 hypothesis, this one here, the average hypothesis, if you look at G bar, is a reasonable fit with a small bias, which is like just 0.21, but there is a large variability that leads to this large variance. And that was like we kind of described it. Let's say the data was somewhere here. It would go like all volatile, right? So it wouldn't just like stay in this sort of expected beam, so to say. It will go wild, right? It will go volatile. And that's the reason behind this large variance. And if you remember, the expected out of sample error is the sum of the bias and the variance, and that's what we are using it to calculate. So E out is 0.75 in the case of H0, and it's 1.90, which is like huge in this case. So the winner in this situation is, of course, H0. But we cannot say that for sure. We cannot say that for every possible scenario. So let's look at another scenario. So here I'm repeating the same experiment here, the one that we saw in the slide. Now let's say we have the same hypothesis sets H0 and H1, and instead of two data points, I have 5 data points, right? So essentially, if you look at the curve, I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And so using the H0 hypothesis and the H1, I'm trying to find my G bar of X. Okay, so with 5 points, we get an advantage for H1. Why? Because we have the chances of getting a G bar closer to Fx more in case of H1 because we have a greater flexibility, right? And so we can bring down the variability that we have here in this situation. Because if you think about this, I can really get somewhat like try to include as many points as possible and come closer to my f of x, right? As opposed to my H0, because of course, like maybe I can bring down the variability a little bit, but like given that I can only draw a straight line, it doesn't matter how many points are given to me. I would still like come up with some other like line essentially, right? And so overall, my variance wouldn't be impacted as much in this case. Of course, um, in this situation, there is a huge drop in variability, as you can see, right? So as a result of that, when we repeat it over like a large number of data sets, we get the bias and the variance. And as you can see in H1, there is a huge decline in variance as a result of the number of data sets, right? There's a huge decline in that. And so the winner in 5 data points problem is H1 because we have a lower E out. And if we just look at H0, my bias didn't change at all. Like how well can my G bar of X do with respect to f of X, right? That's what bias is. And then of course I did bring down the variability a little bit, but not as much. And so that's why my hypothesis set H1 is better in this situation. Okay, so having done this analysis, we have a lot of like things that we need to put together in order to get a better perspective of whatever trade-offs we have seen so far, right? And one way to summarize all the trade-offs that we have looked at so far is something that's known as a learning curve, right? So the learning curve, and this is what a learning curve looks like. So the learning curve summarizes the behavior of the in-sample and out-of-sample errors as we change or as we vary the size of the data n. Because if you remember, after learning with a particular data set D of size n, the final hypothesis G of D, this is how we did the derivation, right? G of D had some in-sample error and had some out-of-sample error. And both of them were dependent on D. And specifically in the bias variance analysis, the expectation with respect to all data sets of size n was considered to be the expected error, right? So if you remember, my expected error was ED, and then the in-sample error was E in, which was GD. This is how we define it. And more importantly, we didn't like pay a lot of attention to this one because we were more interested in the out of sample error, which was like nothing but defined on all data sets, the out of sample error, right? So that's what we were looking at. Okay, so these expected errors are functions of n. And we also saw that in the previous example, right? There is a dependence on n, and the expected error as functions of n is something that's known as a learning curve. This is what a learning curve is. Okay, so that's illustrated here for a simple model and a complex model. So what, like basically a simple model is somewhat similar to what H0 was. Complex model will have like more parameters and more ways of modeling things, right? So if you notice that for the simple model, the learning curve, like these curves, the curves are nothing but the expected error essentially, right? So the learning curves converge quickly as like to the smallest possible expected error essentially, right? And here the behavior is somewhat different. In fact, E out is like really like wild or volatile, right? And it has a huge value. But like this behavior, like the overall behavior is somewhat similar, but for both simple and complex models, the out of sample learning curve, right, is decreasing in n, while the in sample learning curve is increasing in n, right? So the again, like this is the E out, and of course as we keep increasing E out was a sum of bias and variance, right? And that kind of tells us why this is happening as I am increasing n. Now, if you remember in the VC analysis, E out was expressed as the sum of E in and a generalization error that was bounded by that omega, which is a function of VC dimension and n and other things, right? That was the penalty for model complexity, right? So in the bias variance analysis, as opposed to like the VC analysis, E out is the sum of bias and variance. So let us further look at the learning curve and try to kind of bring together the bias variance analysis and the VC analysis and see how the learning curves kind of compare in both situations. So this is the final comparison between VC analysis and bias variance analysis and the learning curves. So we have the expected error and the number of data points. And what's happening here is the VC analysis bounds the generalization error, right? The bias variance analysis, like it's somewhat idealized, I would say, because it assumes that for every n, the average learned hypothesis, G bar, has the same performance as the best approximation to F. And as the n, the number of data points increases, moves to the right on the learning curve, both the generalization error and the various terms, they shrink as expected. So this is the exact sort of comparison of VC analysis and bias variance analysis, except for this part here, most of it kind of matches because E out is the sum of the generalization error and E in, so you can actually see that. And E out, as I said, this is a more like an ideal representation of bias variance analysis. Another like one last point that I'd like to add before we just like end our discussion is that in case of like one big differentiator or key differentiator between the VC analysis and the bias variance analysis is that VC analysis is based purely on the hypothesis set H. It's independent of the learning algorithm A. Okay. In the bias variance analysis, on the other hand, both the hypotheses and the algorithm matters, right? So with the same hypotheses, using a different learning algorithm can produce a different G of D. Since G of D is the building block of the bias variance analysis, this may result in a different bias and variance, right? And although the bias variance analysis is based on squared error measure, the learning algorithm itself does not have to be based on minimizing the square error. It can use any criteria to produce G of D, this thing here, and based on my data set, right? However, once the algorithm has produced my G of D, we measure its bias and variance using squared error. So those are the two important points that I wanted to make. And then finally, the bias variance as such cannot be actually computed in practice because it depends on the target function and the input probability distribution, both are unknown, right? So then the question arises, why did we do that, right? So the bias variance decomposition is a conceptual tool which is helpful when developing models. And the typical goal is to lower one of the terms, like either the bias or the variance, depending on whatever conditions we are working with. right? And the goals, like different, whether we are trying to minimize the bias or the variance, those goals are achieved by different techniques and heuristics. One of the very well known techniques is regularization, which we'll see in the lectures that are coming up. So with this, I would like to end this lecture, and thank you, and see you in the next lecture.